My sister Emily was always the story our family wanted to tell, the one they proudly introduced at dinner parties and church picnics. Our Emily mom would say with her hand on someone's shoulder like they were lucky to even hear her name. Miss Teen Pine Valley debate team, Captain Graphic Design graduate engaged to the son of a local councilman. Everything about her life looked like a polished brochure, curated bright and entirely on schedule. And then there was me. I wasn't the problem. Exactly. I just wasn't interesting. I read quietly, got decent grades, didn't need reminders, didn't need applause. I was the one who refilled the water pitcher, took out the trash without being asked, the one they forgot to call down for family game nights, then said, "Oh, sorry, sweetheart. We thought you were busy with school." It was easier not to mind most of the time. The house had been a flurry of activity for weeks now. Swatches of cream and gold fabrics trailed across the dining table. Mom took daily phone calls with the caterer, and I learned more about fondant tiers than I ever cared to know. Dad was mostly quiet, but dutiful writing checks and nodding through tastings. Emily floated through it all like a bride in a dream. No one asked where I'd been. No one noticed I wasn't in the group text with the wedding planner. Then, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the letter came. Early admission, Stanford University. I read the email twice to make sure, then printed it just to hold something real. I walked upstairs and sat on my bed, clutching it like proof I existed. I didn't run downstairs. I didn't interrupt anyone. I just folded the letter, slid it into the envelope Grandpa Henry had left with my name on it years ago, and whispered, "I'm going." When he gave me that envelope, he'd said, "This fund is your key to freedom. They'll never see you coming." I pressed my thumb against the seal. The paper inside didn't feel like money. It felt like a door. I was going to walk through it. I just didn't know yet what they'd already done behind it. Grandpa Henry never said much when other people were in the room, but when it was just the two of us, usually on the porch swing while everyone else buzzed around inside, his words felt like small anchors dropped into my world. The last time we sat together, he handed me a manila envelope with my full name written across the front. Not Honey, not Sweet Pea, just Grace Elizabeth Harper in his thin, deliberate handwriting. He looked tired that afternoon, thinner than I wanted to admit, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "This is for later," he said. "When you're ready to go college, a new place, whatever opens up for you." I remember asking, "What if they don't agree?" He smiled without humor. "They won't have a say. It's yours. Legally, I've seen to it. That envelope lived at the back of my desk drawer ever since. I never opened it. Didn't need to. I believed him. And when the email came from Stanford, the first thing I did was take it out and place it gently on top. Side by side, the future and the promise that made it possible. Inside was a notarized letter outlining the educational trust he'd created, $75,000. The trustee was listed as my parents, but the terms were clear to be used exclusively for the educational advancement of Grace Elizabeth Harper. No exceptions, no rerouting, no wedding venues, no sister. There was also a letter handwritten on lined paper. "Grace, this is your start line. I hope one day you use it to outrun everything they failed to see in you." I spent the next few days building spreadsheets, checking housing costs in Palo Alto, mapping out tuition estimates. I watched dorm tours and read student forums. For the first time in a long while, I was making decisions just for me. Then, 1 week later, I logged into the account to finalize the payment plan. The balance glared back at me, $0. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a page that hadn't fully loaded, or a bank error I could clear up with a quick phone call. I refreshed the screen twice. Logged out, logged back in, but the number didn't change. Balance $0. The breath caught in my chest like I'd swallowed something sharp. I clicked into the transaction history, fingers stiff. Every movement slower than it should have been. A single transfer. All $75,000 gone. 2 weeks ago. The destination account number looked familiar. I checked the old records from Grandpa's trust documentation. It matched one of our joint family accounts, the one Dad always said he'd keep just in case there were emergencies or deadlines I couldn't manage on my own. At 17, I'd signed the paperwork without thinking. It made them feel needed, harmless, like backup. I scrolled down and saw the memo line fund consolidation family expense. My mouth went dry. I clicked through every screen I could. There was no note about repayment, no pending transaction, just a clean, silent extraction. I called the bank, still hoping for a system error, still pretending this wasn't what it looked like. The woman on the other end was kind but firm. She confirmed that the transfer had been authorized by both Susan and Robert Harper, the account's co-trustees. All permissions were valid. She said, "I'm sorry, Miss Harper." I sat there for a long time just staring at the screen the way someone might stare at the outline of a body on the ground. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the message. We knew what this was, and we took it anyway. I pulled the envelope from my drawer again and reread the letter from Henry, his cursive sharp even in old age. My hands shook, my teeth clenched, but I didn't cry. I closed the letter carefully, folded it back along its crease, and placed it into a new folder labeled Evidence. Downstairs, I could hear laughter, Mom on the phone with the florist, Emily, humming to herself in the kitchen. The wedding countdown was in full swing, and now I knew exactly how they were paying for it. They were in the living room when I came downstairs. Dad flipping through receipts, Mom scrolling on her iPad, murmuring something about seating charts. The air smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, her signature scent for celebration planning. It made my stomach turn. "I need to talk to you," I said. Mom didn't look up. "Can it wait, honey? The photographer just sent over the proofs." "No," I said, "it can't." That got her attention. She lowered the tablet and raised one carefully drawn eyebrow. "Well, I checked my college fund. It's gone." Silence. Dad shifted in his seat but said nothing. I saw the transaction. I continued. "You transferred all of it. $75,000 2 weeks ago." Mom exhaled like I'd just reminded her to take something out of the freezer. "Yes, we did." I blinked. "You what?" She set the iPad down gently. "Grace, you know how expensive weddings are. Your sister's day is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. We had to make choices. That wasn't your money to choose from." Her voice lost its warmth. "You're too young to understand how family works. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." I turned to Dad. "You let this happen." He stared at his hands. "Your mom handled most of the planning, coward." "Stanford expects the deposit in 3 weeks," I said. "That was my tuition, my future." Mom folded her arms. "Maybe you don't need college yet. Maybe a gap year would give you some perspective." The words hit harder than the theft. Emily came in then barefoot and holding a box of favors. "What's going on?" "You paid for your wedding with my college fund," I told her without blinking. She froze. What I didn't know that she said, turning to our parents. "Is that true?" "We did what was best for the family," Mom snapped. Emily looked at me, eyes wide with something close to horror. "Grace, I had no idea." I nodded once. I believed her. She left the room with the box still in her arms, lips pressed tight. I walked upstairs, closed my door, and pulled out the trust paperwork again. Grandpa Henry hadn't just left me a gift, he'd left me a safeguard. The terms were binding. What they did wasn't just betrayal. It was illegal. And now I intended to prove it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't storm out of the house and collapse dramatically in a friend's driveway. That would have made it easier for them, given them a scene to point at to say, "See, she's emotional. She's being unreasonable." Instead, I folded the trust papers again, tucked them back into the folder labeled Evidence, and shut my bedroom door. The silence wasn't comforting. It was surgical, clean, cold, clinical. I sat at my desk, the Stanford acceptance letter still lying neatly beside my keyboard, and opened Grandpa Henry's handwritten letter for the 5th time that week. "You'll never have their noise," he'd written. "But noise isn't power. Quiet people know how to plan." I traced the edge of his signature with the tip of my finger, then opened a blank tab and typed in how to challenge misuse of educational trust. It started there, one vague search. Then another: can trustees be sued for breach? Is it illegal to use college fund for wedding state laws for inheritance fraud California? Within an hour, I was building a digital folder, PDFs of state regulations, case studies, even a Reddit thread where someone had successfully sued a parent for misusing a college fund. I bookmarked legal aid clinics and law firm FAQs. I copied Henry's original terms into a document and highlighted every phrase that mattered. By the third hour, I had found his lawyer, Mr. William Carter, retired but still listed as of counsel at a small firm downtown. I emailed included scanned copies of the trust and explained that I believed the fund had been illegally drained. Then I sat back in my chair, not tired, but stripped down. This wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was grief shaped into something sharper. They hadn't just taken money. They'd taken legacy protection. The one adult who had looked at me, not through me, and promised I'd have a way out, a way forward. I closed all the tabs and opened one final document. I titled it simply, Timeline. Every date, every transaction, every call, I'd build it one line at a time. The email reply from Mr. Carter came early the next morning. He was available to meet Thursday at noon. He wrote Henry would want me to take a look, and I knew I would be there. Mr. Carter met me in a quiet back office that smelled faintly of old paper and lemon polish. He was older than I remembered, with silver eyebrows and a voice that moved slowly. But when he read through the documents, I brought the sharpness returned to his expression, like someone turning on a light. He was very specific, he said, tapping a line in the trust paperwork. Exclusively for the educational advancement of Grace Elizabeth Harper. That wording isn't flexible. It's enforceable. I swallowed. So what they did was a violation, plain and simple. We spent the next hour reviewing timelines, transaction logs, and emails. I signed an affidavit. Mr. Carter made copies of everything. He said the first step would be filing for an injunction to freeze remaining assets, whatever hadn't already been spent on monogram napkins and custom lighting. A week later, the filing went through. The court date was set. The suit was official breach of fiduciary duty misuse of trust violation of inheritance terms. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. They found out at brunch. Susan had organized a tasting at a vineyard an hour outside town. Vendors were everywhere, florist planner, caterer, violinist. I know because one of Emily's friends posted a picture of the setup on Instagram that morning. By noon, they were sipping champagne and discussing centerpiece heights when two process servers walked up and asked for Susan and Robert Harper. The white envelopes were thick, formal, quietly devastating. Emily texted me less than an hour later. "What did you do, Mom's having a meltdown?" She screamed at the wedding planner. Dad had to sit her down. I didn't answer. I just looked at the court documents now officially filed under my name and made a small note in the margin served 12:08 p.m. location, Willow Creek Winery. The power had shifted not loudly, not with a fight, but legally permanently. And the next move was mine. The courtroom wasn't grand, no high ceilings or echoing drama, just a modest space with worn carpet and creaking chairs. But the silence inside held weight. Susan sat to my left, pearls tight against her neck lips, pressed into a line, Robert beside her, eyes lowered. They hadn't spoken to me since the brunch. Now we shared the same air, but none of the history. Mr. Carter stood and began simply presenting the trust documents, the notarized letter from Henry, the transaction logs from the bank. No dramatics, no flourishes, just fact after fact. Each one unfolding like a quiet betrayal spoken aloud. When it was Susan's turn, she shifted in her seat, then rose with a delicate smile aimed directly at the judge. "This was a misunderstanding," she began. "A family matter blown out of proportion. My daughter Grace, she's a good student, but she's sensitive. She saw this as punishment when it was really a temporary adjustment. We were going to replace the money after the wedding expenses settled. This lawsuit, it's unnecessary. It's cruel." She sat down, still smiling. Mr. Carter didn't flinch. He handed the judge one final document, Henry's letter, the one he wrote in his own hand months before his death. The judge read it silently, then looked back at Susan. "I see no misunderstanding here. I see a clear breach of fiduciary duty. You violated the terms of the trust. Full restitution will be made. Legal fees included. The gavel struck once. Susan's mouth opened, then closed. No words came. Robert stood slowly, one hand on the bench for balance. They didn't look at me not once. They just walked out together, each step heavy with something they hadn't expected to carry. I stayed seated as the room emptied, the sound of the gavel still echoing faintly in my chest. Not revenge, just return. Emily showed up 2 days after the ruling. No text, no call, just a knock on my door that came too gently to be anyone else. She stood there holding a white gift box, the kind you'd see at an upscale bridal shower. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled into a low knot. She looked tired, like someone who just learned the world wasn't as curated as the one she'd been raised to believe in. I didn't know she said. I swear to God, Grace, I didn't know they took it from you. I stepped aside to let her in. She sat on the edge of my bed, holding the box in her lap. They lied to me too, she said. They said they were using some backup retirement savings, that it wasn't a big deal. She looked up, her voice thinner now. I believed them, and that makes me part of it even if I didn't mean to be. I sat across from her, saying nothing, just listening. She opened the box and pushed it toward me. Inside was a designer clutch, sleek silver with a tag I didn't bother reading. It was a gift from one of James's aunts. I figured you could sell it. Put it toward books or travel or whatever Stanford throws at you. I didn't say thank you, not because I wasn't grateful, but because something else filled the space between us older than thanks. Something built in long silences and back seats on road trips, in split desserts and unspoken understandings. You didn't owe me that, I said. I know, she replied. But I owed me that. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there for a while, the box between us, neither of us reaching for it. She left an hour later, saying she had a dress fitting to cancel and a few truths to return. After she was gone, I placed the box in the closet and opened my laptop again. A new email from Stanford admissions was waiting in my inbox. The subject line read, Updated Aid Package Fall Term. I clicked before I could brace myself. Stanford had reviewed my situation. They'd spoken to Mr. Carter. The revised financial aid award covered what my family was meant to provide. Loans, grants, scholarships. Somehow they'd made it work. I stared at the numbers, relief settling into my shoulders like a quiet exhale. I was going. I didn't tell anyone. I just went to the bank, opened my own account, no co-signers, no shared permissions, and transferred what was left of my savings into it. I ordered checks in my name and paid the enrollment deposit within the hour. That night, I registered for an online intro course in legal writing. Just one class, just enough to learn the language that people like Susan hoped I'd never speak fluently. Later, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to my mother. I told her the truth, that I hadn't expected an apology. And I certainly wasn't waiting for one, that I knew she'd never admit what it cost her to lose control. I told her I understood now she hadn't stolen the money because she needed it. She'd stolen it because she thought I wouldn't notice, or worse, that I'd notice and stay quiet anyway. I wrote, You taught me silence. I turned it into strategy. The letter wasn't angry. It was clear. I folded it, sealed the envelope, and stared at it for a long time. Then I walked to the back porch, lit a match, and let the paper curl and darken in my hand until it disappeared in ash. Some things didn't need to be sent. They just needed to be said. The next morning, I received a campus housing confirmation. Room 2113, Arilaga Hall move-in scheduled for August 22nd. I added it to my calendar and opened a new spreadsheet titled Expenses Independent. By the time classes began, the story felt distant. Not unimportant, just quiet, now tucked behind other things. Readings, lectures, briefings, the cadence of a different kind of life. Law school moved fast. But I kept up. I liked the structure of it, the way arguments had to be precise, the way rules had to be followed, the way words finally held weight when used right. I joined a peer group for students from unstable family backgrounds. We met twice a month in a windowless seminar room with mismatched chairs. Most people didn't talk much the first meeting, but by the third, someone finally cracked. A second-year student named Sarah shared her story. Her father had drained her FAFSA refund, left her scrambling to cover rent. She'd never told anyone before. I waited until the meeting ended, then slipped her a name. Mr. Carter. He helped me, I said. He's not online. You'll have to call. She nodded, once eyes wide. Thank you. I didn't say more. I didn't have to. Back in my dorm, I kept Henry's letter folded in the front pocket of my case binder. The edges had worn soft from being read and reread, but the ink still held. Every time I unzipped the binder, I saw his closing line. They'll never see you coming. And he was right. They didn't. They spent my future. I used their betrayal to build my own. Grace learns that silence, often mistaken for weakness, can be a powerful tool when transformed into strategy. Her parents' betrayal, using her college fund for her sister's wedding, teaches her that those closest to her may undervalue her worth. Instead of succumbing to emotional outbursts, she channels her grief into calculated action, leveraging legal safeguards to reclaim her future. Through her grandfather's foresight and her own quiet resolve, Grace discovers that true power lies in preparation and precision, not noise. This lesson shapes her path, turning betrayal into a foundation for independence and self-assertion.
The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday while I was reviewing acquisition reports in my downtown office. I'd been expecting it for weeks, ever since my legal team confirmed that the foreclosure proceedings on 1247 Maple Street were moving forward on schedule. Daniela. Mom's voice was barely recognizable through her tears. I need to tell you something. I set down my pen and leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline from the 35th floor of the Meridian building. What's wrong, Mom? We lost the house. The bank. They foreclosed. We have to be out by Friday. Her sobs made it hard to understand every word. Your father and we're going to be homeless. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest that came whenever my parents were in crisis. For the past 6 years, I'd watched them struggle with mounting debt, failed business ventures, and Dad's gambling problem that they thought I didn't know about. Mom, slow down. Tell me exactly what happened. The mortgage company, they've been calling for months. We kept hoping Dad's construction business would pick up, but with the economy, another wave of sobs. We're behind on payments. Way behind. They auctioned the house yesterday. I pulled up the file on my computer. Lopez Holdings LLC had successfully purchased 1247 Maple Street for $420,000 at the foreclosure auction, exactly as I'd planned. The transaction had closed cleanly with no complications. Don't worry, Mom. I'll help you figure this out. How? Her voice cracked with desperation. Daniela, you work at that little startup. You live in a studio apartment. You drive a car older than your brother's kids. How can you help us with something like this? I looked around my corner office, the same office I'd been working from for 3 years as founder and CEO of Meridian Capital Partners, my investment firm that managed $2.8 billion in assets. Mom was right about my car and apartment, though. I'd deliberately maintained a modest lifestyle to keep my success private from my family. I'll figure something out, Mom. Where are you and Dad staying tonight? Your brother Luis said we could sleep on his couch for a few days. But Daniela, we don't have anywhere to go after that. All our things, 40 years of memories in that house. The house at 1247 Maple Street was where I'd grown up. Where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where Mom had taught me to cook in the bright yellow kitchen, where Dad had helped me with homework at the dining room table. It was also where I'd made the decision to build something bigger than myself after watching my parents struggle financially my entire childhood. Mom, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Of course, Mija. But I don't understand how. Just trust me. Don't sign any paperwork. Don't make any commitments to move anywhere permanently. Give me 24 hours. After hanging up, I called my legal team. Marcus, it's Daniela. The Maple Street property is now officially ours, correct? Yes, the foreclosure purchase cleared this morning. Lopez Holdings LLC is the legal owner. What would you like to do with the property? I want to execute the family restoration plan we discussed. Understood. I'll prepare the paperwork for the lease agreement. Same terms we outlined. Exactly. Market rate rent with an option to purchase. And Marcus? I want this handled very carefully. No mention of Meridian Capital or my involvement. As far as anyone knows, Lopez Holdings is a separate entity. Of course. When do you want to present this to your parents? Tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring them to the property myself. That evening, I sat in my modest studio apartment, the same 500 square foot space I'd rented 5 years ago when I was building my company from nothing. I could afford a penthouse now, but I'd kept this place for the same reason I drove a 10-year-old Toyota. Because my family's love needed to be real, not conditional on my success. My phone rang. It was my brother Luis. Daniela, I just wanted to let you know Mom and Dad are here. They're pretty shaken up. How are they holding up? Not great. Dad keeps blaming himself. Mom's been crying all day. I wish there was something we could do, but between my mortgage and the kids' expenses. Luis worked as a high school teacher and coached basketball on weekends. He was a good man doing honest work, but he didn't have the resources to help our parents in a meaningful way. Luis, what if I told you I might have found a solution? What kind of solution? Daniela, this isn't a small problem. They owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just trust me for now. Can you bring them to the house tomorrow at 2 p.m.? The house. Danielle, they can't go back there. It's too painful. Trust me. Okay, but, Daniela, please don't get their hopes up if you don't have a real plan. The next morning, I met with my property management team to finalize the details. The house would need some updates, new paint, carpet cleaning, a few minor repairs. Nothing major, but enough to show that the new ownership cared about maintaining the property. How quickly can we get a crew in there? I asked my operations director, Sarah. We can have people there this afternoon. What's the timeline? I want it perfect by this weekend. Full restoration to move-in condition. That's ambitious but doable. What's the budget? Whatever it takes. This is a priority project. At 2 p.m. sharp, I pulled up to 1247 Maple Street in my old Toyota. Luis's car was already there and I could see my parents sitting in the back seat, both looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. The house looked exactly as I remembered, a modest 2-story home with a small front yard and the oak tree Dad had planted when I was 10. The only difference was the sold sign in the yard and the absence of Mom's flower boxes, which had been removed during the foreclosure process. I walked over to Luis's car and tapped on the window. Hey everyone. Mom got out slowly, her eyes red from crying. Mija, why did you want us to come here? It's too hard to see it like this. Dad remained in the car, staring at the house with an expression I'd never seen before, complete defeat. I wanted to show you something, I said. Can we go look at the backyard? Daniela, we can't just walk around here. Someone else owns this now. I reached into my purse and pulled out a set of keys. Actually, I have permission from the new owner. Luis frowned. How did you get permission? How do you even know who bought it? Because I've been working on this problem longer than you think. I led them around to the backyard, where Mom's vegetable garden still showed signs of her careful tending despite weeks of neglect. Dad finally got out of the car and followed us, his shoulders slumped with resignation. Mom, remember when you used to grow tomatoes back here? And Dad, remember building that deck when I was in high school? Daniela, please, Mom whispered. This is too painful. What if I told you that you could stay? Both my parents looked at me with confusion. What do you mean? Dad spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. The new owner is looking for tenants. Good tenants who would take care of the place. Mija, Mom said gently, we can't afford rent. We couldn't even afford the mortgage payments. What if the rent was affordable? What if it was something you could manage on Dad's social security and the part-time work you've been doing? Dad's eyes narrowed. Daniela, what aren't you telling us? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. 3 years of building a multi-billion-dollar investment firm while my family thought I was struggling at a startup. 3 years of watching them worry about money while I had the power to solve their problems but needed to do it the right way. The new owner is a company called Lopez Holdings. They specialize in family-friendly housing solutions. And you know someone there? Luis asked. You could say that. I took a deep breath. I know someone there because I am Lopez Holdings. The silence that followed was complete. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. What? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. I bought the house, Mom. 3 weeks ago through my holding company. Dad stepped backward, nearly stumbling. Daniela, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your daughter who you think works at a startup actually runs an investment firm worth $2.8 billion. Luis sat down hard on the deck steps. Daniela, that's not possible. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Lopez Holdings website, scrolling to the About Us section where my photo appeared as founder and CEO. For the past 3 years I've been building Meridian Capital Partners. We manage investments for high-net-worth individuals and institutions. Lopez Holdings is one of our subsidiary companies. Mom was staring at my phone screen like it was written in a foreign language. But you live in that tiny apartment. Because I chose to. Because I was building something and didn't want to get distracted by lifestyle inflation. And your car is paid off and reliable. When you're focused on building wealth, you don't waste money on depreciating assets. Dad found his voice again. Daniela, if this is true, if you really have this kind of money, why didn't you help us before we lost the house? This was the question I'd been dreading. Because I needed you to make the hard decisions about Dad's gambling and the business debts. If I'd just paid everything off, nothing would have changed. Gambling. Luis looked confused. What gambling? Dad's face went pale. Daniela, how did you? Dad, I've known about the poker games and the sports betting for 2 years. I know about the $80,000 you borrowed against the house to cover losses. I know about the business loans you took out to chase bigger bets. Mom turned to stare at her husband. Roberto, is this true? Maria, Dad, I said gently, the foreclosure wasn't really about the economy or the construction business. It was about the gambling debts. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Dad admitted to years of gambling problems, chasing losses with bigger bets, borrowing against their home to fund his addiction. Mom learned about debts she'd never known existed. Roberto, Mom said finally, how could you not tell me? I kept thinking I could win it back. I kept thinking the next bet would fix everything. I looked at my father, this man who'd taught me about hard work and integrity, who'd also made choices that nearly destroyed his family. Dad, the foreclosure is actually the best thing that could have happened. What do you mean? Because now we can start over with complete honesty. No hidden debts, no gambling problems, no secrets. But the house is yours again. If you want it. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I have a lease agreement here. Market rate rent, which works out to about $1,200 per month. Something you can afford on your combined income. After 2 years of on-time payments, you'll have the option to purchase the house back at current market value. Mom looked at the papers, then at me. Mija, why would you do this? Because you're my parents. Because this is your home. Because everyone deserves a second chance. But the money we owe you. You don't owe me anything. This is an investment property for my company. You're simply tenants who happen to be my parents. Luis was reading over the lease agreement. Daniela, this rent is way below market rate for this area. Good tenants are worth the discount. Dad stepped forward, tears in his eyes. Daniela, I don't understand how you forgive me for nearly losing your childhood home. Dad, I'm not forgiving you. I'm giving you the chance to rebuild. What's the difference? Forgiveness is about the past. Rebuilding is about the future. Over the next hour we walked through the house room by room. I explained the renovation plans, fresh paint throughout, new carpeting in the bedrooms, updated appliances in the kitchen. Everything would be ready for them to move back in by the weekend. But Daniela, Mom said as we stood in the living room, I still don't understand why you kept this secret from us. Why didn't you tell us you were successful? I looked around the room where I'd spent countless hours as a child, where I'd made the decision to build something that would protect my family from financial crisis. Because I needed to know that your love wasn't conditional on my success. Because I needed you to see me as your daughter, not as someone who could solve your problems with money. And now we can have an honest relationship. No more secrets about gambling, no more hiding my success, no more pretending anyone is something they're not. Luis stood up from the couch. Daniela, I need to apologize. For what? For not seeing what you were building. For treating you like the little sister who needed guidance instead of the successful businesswoman you'd become. Luis, you've always supported me. You just didn't know the whole story. But I should have asked better questions. I should have looked deeper instead of making assumptions based on your car and apartment. Dad stepped forward. Daniela, I need to ask you something. What's that? Do you think I can beat this gambling problem? I looked at my father, seeing the genuine fear in his eyes. Dad, I think you can beat it if you commit to getting real help. Professional help. Like counseling? Like Gamblers Anonymous? Like regular check-ins with a therapist? Like complete transparency about finances going forward? And if I don't? If I relapse? Then the lease agreement includes clauses about financial responsibility and property care. This is a business arrangement, Dad. It comes with business expectations. He nodded slowly. I understand. But Dad, I believe you can do this. I wouldn't be offering you this opportunity if I didn't think you could succeed. As we prepared to leave that afternoon, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. Mija, I have one more question. What's that? Are you happy? With all this success, all this money, are you actually happy? I considered her question seriously. I'm happy that I can help my family. I'm happy that I built something meaningful. But mostly, I'm happy that we can finally be completely honest with each other. Even about your father's gambling? Especially about that. Secrets are what got us into this mess. And you're not angry with us? For not seeing what you'd accomplished. Mom, you saw a daughter who lived modestly and worked hard. You weren't wrong about that. You just didn't see the whole picture. But we worried about you. We tried to give you career advice. And I let you because I needed to know that your concern came from love, not disappointment. 3 weeks later, I helped my parents move back into 1247 Maple Street. The house looked better than it had in years: fresh paint, new carpeting, and Mom's flower boxes reinstalled under the front windows. Dad had started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice a week. Mom had returned to her part-time job at the local library. Luis visited every Sunday for family dinner, just like old times. The first rent check arrived at my office exactly on time, written in Mom's careful handwriting. Lopez Holdings LC $1,200 September rent. I didn't deposit it immediately. Instead, I kept it on my desk for a week as a reminder that sometimes the best investment isn't about financial returns. Sometimes it's about giving people the chance to rebuild their lives with dignity intact. My assistant knocked on my door one afternoon. Ms. Lopez, your mother called. She wanted to know if the owner of Lopez Holdings would be interested in renting them some space in the backyard for a larger vegetable garden. I smiled. Tell her the owner would be delighted to discuss expansion options. Should I schedule a meeting? No need. I'll be there for Sunday dinner anyway. 6 months later, Dad made his final payment to clear the remaining gambling debts. The lease agreement included an option to purchase the house after 2 years of on-time payments, and they were well on track to become homeowners again. But the most important change wasn't financial. The most important change was that we could finally be honest with each other about who we really were, not who we appeared to be, not who we thought we should be, but who we actually were. Sometimes the best way to save your family isn't to rescue them from their problems. Sometimes it's to give them the tools and opportunity to solve their problems themselves. And sometimes the house you grew up in becomes the home you get to give back to the people who made you who you are. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Mija, the tomatoes are coming in beautifully this year. Bring containers on Sunday, you're taking some home. I texted back, I'll bring the biggest containers I can find. Some investments pay dividends in ways you never expected. I stared at my phone screen, reading the group chat message for the third time. The family WhatsApp group, appropriately named Walker Family Updates by my mother, was buzzing with activity on this Thursday afternoon. Mom, emergency family meeting tonight at 7 p.m. We need to discuss Maya's jobless situation before it gets worse. Dad, agreed. This has gone on long enough. Brother Jason, finally. Someone needs to talk sense into her. Sister-in-law Karen, we're just concerned about her future. I was sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of the Meridian Tower, overlooking the city skyline, wearing a tailored Armani blazer and reviewing quarterly reports for my investment portfolio. The irony wasn't lost on me. For the past 3 years, my family had believed I was unemployed, living off savings and struggling to find direction. What they didn't know was that I was Maya Walker, founder and CEO of Phoenix Capital Group, one of the fastest-growing investment firms on the West Coast. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type my usual diplomatic response when my office phone rang. Ms. Walker, this is Rebecca from the boardroom. The board members are assembled and ready for your acquisition announcement regarding the Hartwell Industries deal. I glanced at the time, 4:47 p.m. The family meeting was in just over 2 hours. Perfect timing, Rebecca. Tell them I'll be right there. I paused, looking at the group chat still open on my phone. Actually, can you patch this call through to my mobile? I'd like to take it on speaker. Of course, ma'am. As I walked toward the boardroom, my phone lit up with Rebecca's call. I had a sudden impulse, one that had been building for 3 years of family interventions, concerned phone calls, and not-so-subtle hints about getting my life together. I answered the call and immediately put it on speaker. Ms. Walker, Rebecca's voice came through clearly. The board is ready to discuss the Hartwell Industries acquisition. The $2.8 billion deal is finalized and they're waiting for your announcement to the press. I held the phone closer to the group chat and typed, "Actually, I'm in the middle of something important. Can you give me just a moment?" Then I opened the family group chat and began typing while Rebecca's voice continued in the background. Me, about tonight's meeting, I might be a few minutes late. Work is getting busy. The responses came immediately. Jason, work? What work? You've been unemployed for months. Mom, Hiya, sweetie, we've talked about this. You can't keep pretending you have a job. Karen, it's okay to admit when you need help. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I typed, "You're right. I think it's time we talked about my work situation. Actually, let me share something with you right now." I held the phone closer to my face and said loudly, "Rebecca, I'm sorry for the delay. Please continue with the board update." Rebecca's professional voice filled my office. "Of course, Ms. Walker. As I was saying, the board has approved the Hartwell Industries acquisition for $2.8 billion. This will make Phoenix Capital Group the third largest investment firm in the region. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning to announce your company's latest expansion." I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear in the group chat as my family members started and stopped typing responses. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Hiya, whose phone call is that?" "Me, that's my assistant, Rebecca. She's updating me on some work matters." "Dad, Hiya, this isn't funny. Stop playing games." I took a deep breath and typed, "I'm not playing games. Rebecca, can you please confirm my full title for the board minutes?" "Certainly, Ms. Walker. Maya Walker, founder and chief executive officer of Phoenix Capital Group, with current assets under management totaling $4.7 billion. The group chat went completely silent. I waited 30 seconds, then typed, "So about that emergency meeting to discuss my jobless situation?" My phone immediately started ringing. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I answered but didn't put away the group chat. "Hi, Mom. Maya Elizabeth Walker, what in the world is going on? Did we just hear someone say you manage $4 billion? $4.7 billion, actually. And yes, you did. But you said you were between jobs. You said you were figuring things out." I walked to my office window, looking down at the bustling street below. 3 years ago, I'd made the decision to keep my success private from my family. It had started as a temporary measure. I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something real before announcing it to the world. But as Phoenix Capital grew from a small startup to a major player in the investment world, my family's assumptions about my life had become more entrenched. Every family gathering became an intervention. Every phone call included career advice. Every holiday dinner featured suggestions about practical jobs I should consider. "Mom, I never said I was unemployed. I said I was working on building something. But you live in that tiny apartment and you drive that old car." Because I chose to. Because I was reinvesting everything into my company. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Dad asking questions, Jason saying something I couldn't make out. "Maya, I'm putting you on speaker. Your father and Jason are here." "Hi, everyone." Dad's voice came through, stern and confused. "Maya, I need you to explain what we just heard. Did someone really say you own a company worth billions?" "I don't own a company worth billions, Dad. I own a company that manages billions. Phoenix Capital Group manages investment portfolios for high-net-worth individuals and institutional clients." "Since when?" Jason's voice carried a tone I'd never heard before, something between shock and embarrassment. "I founded the company 4 years ago. We've been profitable for 3 years." The silence stretched on until Mom found her voice again. "4 years ago? But we've been worried about you. We've been planning interventions. Jason even talked to his boss about getting you an entry-level position at his company." That hit me harder than I'd expected. Jason did what? Jason's voice was quieter now. I asked Mr. Peterson if there were any openings in our marketing department. Entry-level stuff. I thought you needed help. I sat down in my desk chair, suddenly feeling the weight of 3 years of misunderstandings. Jason, what does your company do again? We're a mid-sized marketing firm. About 50 employees. What's your annual revenue? Maybe 12 million on a good year. Why? I looked at the quarterly report on my desk. Because last quarter, Phoenix Capital generated 15 million in management fees alone. Another long silence. Maya, Dad's voice was careful now. Are you saying you make more in 3 months than Jason's entire company makes in a year? I'm saying that the daughter you've all been worried about has been doing just fine. Mom's voice was small. But why didn't you tell us? I stood up and walked back to the window. This was the question I'd been dreading for 3 years. Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing. What do you mean? Mom, in the past 3 years, how many times have you asked me how I was doing versus how many times you've told me what I should be doing differently? That's not. We were just trying to help. Were you? Or were you embarrassed by having a daughter who didn't fit your definition of success? I could hear whispering in the background. Maya, Jason said finally, I need to apologize. I've been treating you like you were the family screw-up. You have been. And you just let me? I wanted to see if your love for me was conditional on my apparent success. The group chat, which had been silent, suddenly exploded with activity. I could see Karen typing, then stopping, then typing again. Other family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, were being added to the conversation by Jason. Jason, everyone needs to see this. Maya, tell them what you just told us. I sighed and typed, Hi everyone. For those just joining, I'm not unemployed. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Capital Group. We manage $4.7 billion in assets. The responses came fast and furious. Aunt Linda, what? Cousin Mike, are you serious right now? Uncle Tom, Phoenix Capital? I've heard of that company. They're huge. Grandmother, I'm so confused. My phone started ringing again. This time it was Karen. Maya, I need to apologize, she said without preamble. I've been so condescending to you. All those times I tried to give you career advice and you were running a billion-dollar company. Karen. No, let me finish. Last Christmas I literally gave you a book called Finding Your Purpose After 30. You probably wanted to throw it at my head. I couldn't help but laugh. I actually read it. It was quite good even though I'd already found my purpose. Oh my God, Maya. I'm mortified. The group chat was still going crazy. I could see my phone battery draining from all the notifications. Mom, Maya, we need to talk properly. Can you come to dinner tonight? Not for an intervention, just to talk. Me, I can't tonight. I have a board meeting about the acquisition, then a dinner with some clients from Japan. Dad, clients from Japan? Me, Dad, I run an international investment firm. I have clients from everywhere. My office door opened and Rebecca appeared, looking professional but slightly concerned. Ms. Walker, the board is getting restless. They're ready to discuss the Hartwell acquisition and the expansion into the European markets. I looked at my phone, still buzzing with family messages, then at Rebecca. Tell them I'll be right there. And Rebecca, after the meeting, can you prepare a portfolio overview for my family? Something simple that explains what we do. Of course. Should I include the client testimonials and the awards we've won? Everything. It's time they understood what I've been building. I turned back to my phone and typed in the group chat. I have to go to my board meeting now. We're discussing a $2.8 billion acquisition and expansion into European markets. But let's plan dinner for this weekend. I have a lot to explain. Jason, Maya, are you mad at us? I thought about that question. Was I mad? Hurt? Disappointed? Me, I'm not mad. I'm sad that it took this long for you to see me as I really am. But I'm hopeful that we can build something better from here. Mom, we love you, sweetheart. Successful or not, we love you. Me, I know you do. And I love you too. But loving someone means believing in them even when you don't understand their path. I put my phone in my purse and walked toward the boardroom. As I passed Rebecca's desk, she handed me a folder. The Hartwell acquisition details, ma'am. And I took the liberty of preparing a family-friendly explanation of Phoenix Capital Group. I thought you might need it. Rebecca, you're invaluable. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, and your mother called the main line while you were on your mobile. She wanted to know if Phoenix Capital Group was really your company. I confirmed that you are indeed our founder and CEO. I paused at the boardroom door. What did she say to that? She said, and I quote, "My daughter is a genius and I've been an idiot." I smiled. Maybe this conversation had been exactly what we all needed. The boardroom was filled with 12 of the most successful business leaders in the region. As I took my seat at the head of the mahogany table, I thought about the contrast between this room and my family's living room, where they'd been planning an intervention for their unemployed daughter. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the delay. Let's discuss the Hartwell acquisition. For the next 2 hours, we went through financial projections, market analysis, and strategic planning. The acquisition would expand Phoenix Capital's reach into 3 new markets and add over 200 high-net-worth clients to our portfolio. As the meeting wrapped up, board member Patricia Chin raised her hand. Maya, I wanted to mention that Forbes called. They're doing a feature on the top female CEOs under 35. You're on their list. When does that publish? Next month. They want to do a photo shoot at your office. I thought about my family seeing my face on the cover of Forbes. The same family who'd been planning to stage an intervention about my career prospects. That sounds fine. Just coordinate with Rebecca. After the board meeting, I had dinner with the Japanese clients, the Tanaka Group, who were interested in investing $500 million with Phoenix Capital. The dinner went well, and by the time I got home to my tiny apartment, which was actually a modest 2-bedroom I'd chosen specifically to maintain my cover, it was nearly 11 p.m. I opened the family group chat to find 127 new messages. Scrolling through them was like watching my family's understanding of me evolve in real time. The messages had gone from shock to embarrassment to pride to excitement to a million questions about my business. Aunt Linda. Maya, I just Googled Phoenix Capital Group. You've been featured in the Wall Street Journal 6 times. Cousin Mike. There's a picture of you ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange last year. Why didn't you tell us? Uncle Tom. I just realized when you said you were consulting last Christmas, you meant you were running board meetings for billion-dollar deals, didn't you? Grandmother. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. But next time maybe give your old grandmother a hint? My heart can't take too many more surprises like this. The message that got me was from Jason. Maya, I keep thinking about all the times I gave you advice about finding a real job. I'm so embarrassed. You must have thought I was the biggest idiot. I typed back, Jason, you're not an idiot. You're my brother and you were trying to help. But maybe next time, ask questions before offering solutions. Jason, deal. Can I ask a question now? Me, sure. Jason, are you happy? Like really happy with your life? I looked around my simple apartment. The same apartment I'd kept as a symbol of my commitment to building something real before celebrating it. Tomorrow, I'd probably start looking for a place that better reflected my actual financial situation. But tonight I was content with the space where I'd made the decision that changed everything. Me, yes Jason. I'm really happy. I love what I do, I'm good at it, and I've built something that matters. Mom, Paya, can I ask you something too? Me, of course. Mom, do you think we're bad parents? For not seeing who you really were. I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Me, Mom, you're not bad parents. You're human parents. You made assumptions based on what you could see and I deliberately hid the full picture. But I hope we can do better going forward. Dad, how do we do better? Me, by asking instead of assuming. By supporting instead of fixing. By trusting that I might know something about my own life. Mom, can we start over? Me, we don't need to start over. We just need to start being honest with each other. Over the next hour, the conversation shifted from apologies to genuine curiosity about my work. My family asked thoughtful questions about how I'd built the company, what my day-to-day life was like, and what my plans were for the future. Karen asked about the challenges of being a young female CEO in finance. Dad wanted to know about my investment philosophy. Mom was fascinated by the international aspects of my work. It was the most real conversation we'd had in years. Finally, around midnight I typed, I should get some sleep. Board meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow about the European expansion. Jason, Maya, before you go, can I say something? Me, sure. Jason, I'm proud of you. Not because you're successful but because you stayed true to yourself even when we didn't understand. That takes courage. Me, thank you, Jason. That means a lot. Mom, dinner this Sunday? At our house. I want to hear everything. Me, I'd love that. But fair warning, I might show up in something nicer than jeans and a t-shirt. Dad, you can show up however you want. You're our daughter and we're proud of you. As I got ready for bed, I thought about the conversation that would happen on Sunday. For the first time in 3 years, I could be completely myself with my family. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more strategic omissions. My phone buzzed with one final message from the group chat. It was from grandmother. Maya, dear, I have just one question. When you said you were figuring things out, all those times, were you actually figuring out how to spend $4 billion? I laughed out loud and typed back, something like that, Grandma. Something like that. The next morning, the Hartwell acquisition announcement made the front page of the Financial Times. The article described Phoenix Capital Group as one of the most impressive success stories in recent investment history, and quoted me extensively about our expansion plans. At 9 a.m., my phone started buzzing with messages from family members who'd seen the news. Mom, Paya, you're on the front page of the Financial Times. Jason, my coworkers are freaking out. Apparently, I'm related to a financial genius. Karen, I'm framing this article. My sister-in-law is famous. But the message that made me smile was from Dad. Saw the news. Proud of you, kiddo. See you Sunday for dinner. I'll try to have some intelligent questions about European markets. As I sat in my office that morning, preparing for another day of board meetings and client calls, I realized something important. The family intervention that was supposed to fix my jobless situation had actually fixed something much more valuable. The gap between who I really was and who my family thought I was. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to let the truth speak for itself. And sometimes the most satisfying moment isn't proving people wrong. It's finally letting them see you clearly.